Hey traders, this is Heather. All right, let's take a look at what happened in the markets today. So we are starting out with my 5-minute chart in SPX. This is right where we opened. Just as a reminder, this white line is going to be the opening price for the day. Up here, we have the H1 and the H2 on the quant pivots, and then the L1 on the quant pivots is down here. The L2 is down below. You can't see that, but just take a look at how price just kind of chopped around the opening price for quite some time. It was actually about 2.5 hours into the day before price finally broke out. Now, it did make that breakout on news about a possible deal or, signing for a deal in Iran. Of course, that ended up not really being what we thought it was. So price came back down. Look, I think that is still going to be a driver. It's still going to be a catalyst for the markets for right now. Certainly not as dramatically as it was way back in March. Or in April. But I think with these little headlines, we're going to get little movements off of those headlines for now. So just kind of keep that in mind. So look, we got the pop above. This was a pretty parabolic move at the time, but we got the pop up above H1. I thought we were actually going to tag H2. We didn't. Came back down. Kind of flirted with it again, but of course, ultimately closed below that H1, which is typically what we see. Let's zoom out though, and I want to look at the daily chart so that we can see that really we've been in a range all week long. We hit a new all-time high. Was it last week? Yeah, last week. It was, I think, our 7th all-time high for just the month of May. Finally coming down to rest. We got a little pullback to the daily 8. That is all we can really hope for in this market. And if you saw my video last week, that's really what I talked about how when something is flying high like this, you just want to look for a pullback to the daily 5 or the daily 8 if you can get that. So I want to point out the weekly quant pivots now because we are finally staying in the sandbox, which is what we typically do. So let's move over to see just those weekly quant pivots, and I can show you what I am talking about. So just as a reminder, if you're new or if you need the reminder, in between the H1 and the L1, that's called the sandbox, and that is where price typically stays. And on the occasion that price does breach above the H1 or sometimes the H2, what typically happens is price comes back in to close out that time period in the sandbox. Happened beautifully last week. We have not seen a lot of that lately. That is what usually happens statistically. The majority of the time, like 65% of the time, that is what happens. But through March and April, we saw a lot of atypical price action. So if we look back here, this week, price closed way above the H2. Week before that, closed way above the H2. Week before that, it ended up closing inside the H2, but just barely, and that was after being above it for quite some time. So anyways, my point, we don't need to look back too much, but my point is, I think this will be one of those normal weeks where we stay inside the sandbox, and I am okay with it. Look, the market made great run up, just needs to settle down and digest. This is like a marathon runner just stopping to grab a drink of water. Okay, he's not taking off his shoes, sitting in front of the TV on the couch, just needs to stop and get a drink of water, right? I'm okay with that. All right, so what is still moving though? Well, Apple's not taking a drink of water. Apple made another all-time high today, hit one of my fib extensions, hit my second fib extension. Okay, so I had a 1236 fib extension at 299, hit that. I had another one at 305, hit that today. My next target is going to be this fib extension up at 316. This is my 1618 fib extension. Happens to be right above this snow line at 314. So I think 315 is going to be a really good target for the next move, the next big move that Apple makes. Google has been a great, great high flyer. It is coming down to rest. Now it's actually below the daily 5 and it's below the daily 8. Look at where it has settled, right at this tree line, which is great. Look, doesn't need to come back down to the daily 21. Could it? Absolutely. If it does, I'm fine with that. But look, it's still in between the daily 21 and plus 1 ATR. That's what this dotted line is right here. But it's just resting on the tree line. That's a great spot for it to rest. And you want to know something? While it's doing that, it has developed a 1 hour and a 4 hour squeeze. You can see that right up here. That's what those little red squares mean. It's in a 1 hour and a 4 hour squeeze. So what I would love to do is look for the next leg higher on Google. And for me, that is going to be this tree line up here at 422. But look, I don't need 422 to be happy. This is what I would love to get. I would love to get a call debit spread for the June monthlies at 400, 410 for about $3. I think that is a great trade. If it gets up to 420, before that trade expires, that would be great. If I could get max profit. I don't need max profit though. If I can just get a double out of that, if I can turn $3 into $6, I am a happy girl. All right, so that is what I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching, traders. Make sure to like the video if you liked it, and I will see you in the trading rooms. Thanks so much. Bye.